Then they will go and ground themselves as they landed their helicopter and share with you at the ground what actually happened. All right. So let me first introduce the first speaker, which is also happened to be a MISI faculty member. And he received his bachelor degree, and that is Dr. Javad. And he received his bachelor degree in industrial engineering and a master's in OR and a PhD in operation management. So during the period of 2007 and 2008, he was involved in a study exploring supply chain challenges in the European auto industry at IMD, Switzerland. Okay, his research has been published in a number of international journals, and his main area of research is in supply chain strategy, intersection between strategic management and supply chain management, and so on. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Java to share with you the auto industry GVC.
Thank you, Albert, for introducing.
It's not. No, it's not on. No, it's not on.
Hello. Okay. So in this session, I'm asked to speak about automotive industry. First of all, good morning, everyone. In automotive industry, basically, is one of the industry that many of the countries around the world they are trying to position themselves in different ways in the value chain. So in this session, I'm going to go over on the basically three segments of this interesting industry. What is going on in global value chain in the overall in global automotive industry. I will speak about global value chain in automotive industry and the role and position of developing country, how developing countries, some of the developing countries have been able to plug in or insert themselves in the global value chain in automotive industry. And then I will share with you some of the future-oriented trends and things that is going to happen in the automotive industry and how they would impact on global value chain and how basically developing country can have a better policy to be positioned and to be able to place themselves in the future of automotive industry. So let's first start with the global value chain in automotive industry in the global level. And let's see what is going on in the automotive industry in this level. Basically, as you know, the global commodity or global value chain is considered as a producer-driven global value chain. But overall, if we look at the global value chain in almost all the industry, they are moving toward buyer-driven value chain, from producer-driven value chain to buyer-driven value chain. So, but in automotive industry, another interesting phenomena is emergence of global supplier or very powerful tier 0.5, tier 1 supplier, which basically gave us some insight about changing the name of this value chain from producer-driven supply chain to even supplier or supplier-producer-driven value chain. This is because of emergence of this new, not very new nowadays, but at least in 2 decades, in 2 last decades, the global component manufacturer have become very, very powerful in global automotive value chain, and that's why we need to change the name even to basically from producer to producer and supplier-driven value chain. So if we look at, again, automotive industry, the structure of the industry is slightly different from other industry, basically because of the wave of outsourcing that happened during the 1980s and especially 1990s. And we have a kind of different structure in this supply chain, which is tiering structure. We have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of suppliers in different level or layer of upstream of the supply chain in automotive industry. And then basically the role of tier 1 supplier is being changing. They are becoming more powerful in this industry, and they are even basically driving many of the changes or many of the trend in the whole value chain. So the common value chain, common type of governance in the value chain of automotive industry based on this kind of a structure is relational governance. And it's moving to modular type of governance. I'm assuming in the basically yesterday sessions, you're all familiar with the different type of governance of the value chain. We have almost 5 type of governance. But if we look at automotive industry, because of all these trends, that first tier supplier become very powerful, and then we have this kind of different structure of tiering in the automotive industry. We are moving basically most of the governance type in automotive industry is relational, and it's moving toward the modular manufacturing. But in modular manufacturing, there are some concerns. This is not purely a modular value chain, because in automotive industry, it's very difficult to have turnkey products, right? I will talk a little bit about the differences of automotive industry compared to, for example, PC industry, that we can expect pure modular type of value chain. But here, of course, it's the trend is moving toward the modular value chain, but it's not purely modular. And then there is another type of governance in automotive industry, which is happened in other industries also, which is basically ISO 9000, and in automotive industry specifically is TS 16949 standards, that most of the automakers, they are using this kind of quality standard to manage and coordinate the value chain. But basically the difference between ISO 9000 and TS is specifically and customized for automotive industry. So what are the key determinants of value chain? This is almost a generic type of discussion. You had all these determinants in different type of industries value chain. But if we look at the determinants, key determinants of the governance of the value chain, we have complexity of transaction. Complexity of transaction in automotive industry means how suppliers, they can be able to, how suppliers can basically provide just-in-time supply, and how they can accommodate with the lead firms in the value chain in terms of product differentiation, which is a trend in automotive industry. And then codifiability of tacit and explicit knowledge. It is very, very important in automotive industry, because in automotive industry, as I will talk about the integral nature of the product in this industry. Because of integrity and integral nature of the product, there are a lot of tacit knowledge involved in automotive industry. And transferring this tacit knowledge is not going to be easy, very, very difficult to transfer and basically codify this type of knowledge. So, and it's becoming more challenging in the future. And then, of course, we have capability of supplier, complexity of the transactions, and codifiability of the knowledge is going to be our determinants for basically designing or structuring a supply chain or value chain in automotive industry. So if we look at the opportunities for upgrading the suppliers in different type of value chain governance, what are those opportunities to upgrade our supplier? For example, in the market governance type, this is the upgrading of the supplier is independent of the player in the industry. This is straightforward. In modular type, it is open-ended. In relational type, open-ended. In captive product process and in hierarchy type of governance, we don't have any upgrading of the supplier. There is no opportunity because it is a hierarchy and it is always happening by lead firms. So basically, the upgrading policy for in automotive industry is going to be, the trend is going to be between moving from captive and hierarchy type of governance to modular and relational. I will talk about basically three main regions in automotive industry: US, Europe, Western Europe, and Japan, how they started governing the automotive value chain, and then what is going on right now. But the general trend is moving from these two type of governance type to modular and relational. As I mentioned earlier, of course, the modular type is going to be a little bit difficult for the companies to be purely modular, but this is the trend. If we look at automotive industry and in global level, we have a kind of nested structure. What I mean by nested structure, if we look at the vehicle design and development, in vehicle design and development, it is concentrated in a few countries. For example, there are a few countries and few cities around the world that automotive development and design is concentrated in this part of the world. If we look at US, we have Detroit. If we look at Germany, we have Stuttgart for Daimler. We have Cologne for European division of the Ford. We have Wolfsburg for Volkswagen. And also, if we look at France, we have Paris for Renault. And in Japan, we have Tokyo and Nagoya. So these are few cities around the world, or a few countries around the world, that most of the vehicle development and the design is concentrated in these countries. So it is very, very concentrated and centralized, and I would say this is a global integration in terms of vehicle design. But when it comes to production, we don't have this kind of phenomena or global integration in terms of production. In terms of production, we have regional, basically, organization. This is not the global integration. What I mean by regional, there are a number of pressures in automotive industry to be regionally organized in terms of production. The most important one is political pressure and also the technical aspect of automotive industry. I will talk about these two later on, what do we mean by political pressure and technical risk. Basically, when we say it is regional integration, these are the regions that most of the production is concentrated in automotive value chain: North America, South America, Europe, Southern Africa, and Asia. So because of these local production pressure, most of the big automakers, they are pushing their supplier, their tier 1 supplier and tier 0.5 supplier to set up and establish their facility also in different parts of the world, because they have been working with those suppliers for many years, and they are very, very comfortable to work with those suppliers, and they don't want to change to other suppliers that they may or may not be capable to provide those kind of component that they would need for producing the car. So this is another requirement for the automotive component supplier industry, that they have to have a global presence to be involved in the global value chain. If we look at within the region, what is going on within the region in automotive industry, most of the automotive production and activity is going to be driven by cost. So within the region, those countries that they have lower operating cost, basically the automakers or the politicians, they would like to establish the facility in those lower operating cost locals. And interestingly, basically, automotive parts is very, very heavily traded among the region. But we don't see that much trading in terms of finished vehicles among the regions. There is basically the main reason is the political reason that most of the politicians, they want to set up their own facility in automotive industry in their own country. So this is a kind of schematic way of looking at this structure in automotive industry. We have a global industry. This is basically, we have a lot of flows and trade in terms of finished vehicle and in terms of parts between the region, but it is limited by, as I mentioned earlier, political considerations and technical considerations. This is not purely basically, again, we don't expect that much finished vehicle flows in this part. But of course, there are a lot of trade and flows in terms of automotive parts and components. But if we look at within the region we have both flows. We have flow of finished vehicle, and we have flows and trade of component and parts. So, and then we have domestic or national production system that is very, very focused on basically every country. They want to have their own production base, their own production capability. Some of the countries that they have been investing in this industry. And then we have local clusters within the countries that, as I mentioned earlier, in different region and different country, we can expect cluster of automotive industry in terms of design cluster and in terms of assembly. If we look at Germany, we have assembly cluster and design cluster. And then other part of the world, other region of part of the world that they are manufacturing most of the automotive finished vehicle, we will expect this kind of a structure in automotive industry. So this is a kind of nested structure in automotive global value chain, which is slightly different from other industries, like electronic industry and basically or apparel industry. That this is a kind of global integration in terms of design and regional integration in terms of production. So if we look at basically, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of, as I mentioned earlier, basically there is one reason for this, one of the reason that I mentioned for regional production was a technical reason. By technical reason, what I mean is that basically we have two main category of component and parts in automotive industry. Some of the parts are very bulky, heavy, and they are very model-specific parts and components. Some of the parts are very generalized, standardized, light. So we will expect different type of supply chain to support these two type of component in automotive industry. For this part, for bulky, heavy, and model-specific parts, basically they have to be placed as much as possible near and close to assembly facility. But and the main driver would be just-in-time delivery, timely delivery, and also other type of policy that automakers, they would put in place to basically coordinate and optimize the flows between those component manufacturers and assembly facility. And then we have lighter, more generic parts that the main driver of these lighter and more generic parts is going to be a scale economy and low labor cost. So by this, we can expect basically the dispersion of automotive parts production around the world in a different way, or even in the region in different way. We can expect there will be some supplier that they will be focusing on the scale economy and low labor cost in order to produce this kind of product, and then there will be some supplier that they should be placed as much as possible close to assembly facility in order to basically provide timely delivery and also accommodate with just-in-time requirement for automakers. So this is not new. Outsourcing boom and the rise of global supplier in many industries, this has happened. But in automotive industry, basically, there are some concern in automotive industry, which is, again, different from other industry. At least here in this chart, we can see from 1998 or 1999, the employment rate for parts manufacturer is significantly higher than assembly manufacturing or assembly production. So it means there are a lot of outsourcing in that period of time. There was a lot of outsourcing. But the thing is, based on this outsourcing trend, have automakers been able to come up with a standard in order to basically manage these flows that they are basically moving away from their traditional manufacturing. What I mean is that if they have some sort of standards to manage these outsourcing flows, they will be able to move toward modular type of manufacturing, which hasn't happened so far in automotive industry. In some part, it has happened, but in the basically the majority part of the automotive industry, it hasn't happened because of integrity and interrelationship of between some of the components with the car. It is very, very difficult to imagine that you can put a different type of engine, any kind of engine to your car, because the body it has to be very, very connected and interrelated to engine or transmission or axle or different component, different strategic component, that the interrelationship or interface is very, very difficult. So in automotive industry, up to now, basically, most of the automakers, they haven't been able to define a good standard to manage this interface. If they can, they should be able basically to move toward the modular type of production, which hasn't happened so far. So if we look at the history of automotive industry in terms of governing the value chain, we can see at least three different type of governing the value chain. In a traditional way, US automotive industry, they were using hierarchy. If we look at the Ford in 1920, Ford in 1920s, they were basically manufacturing everything from the beginning toward the end by Ford. The ownership was all from Ford, right? And then in 1990s, they basically, there are some companies like Vista-On and Delphi that they were spun off from Ford and GM. But the traditional way of managing the value chain is hierarchy. If we look at Japan, Japan has different type of story in terms of the governing the value chain. In Japan, we have mix of relational and captive. One of the reasons to be basically to use the captive type of governing of value chain was lack of working capital. Because Japan at the time, they were facing with the lower for working capital, they were using most of the suppliers to basically support them and to hold the inventory instead of the assembly production, assembly facility, and then they were able to use basically the working capital from the supplier. So this is a kind of mix of relational and captive governance mechanism in Japan, which is different from US. In Europe, we have completely different type of evolution of value chain in automotive industry. Most of the first tier and global suppliers in Europe, they basically started independently. They were not dependent on any automakers. And then nowadays, basically, they are able to provide a type of modular manufacturing or modular. They are plugged in a modular, most of the modular value chain in automotive industry. So again, in different regions, we have a type of oligopoly industry structure. There are a number of very powerful automakers in Western Europe, in US, in Japan, and they are basically using the combination of capture and hierarchy or vertical integration type of managing the value chain. And then, of course, we have different type of value chain in Europe, which is type of modular because of competency and capability of auto suppliers in this region, in Europe. So, as I mentioned earlier, it is very, very difficult to move from captive or vertical integration or hierarchy type of governance in automotive industry to modular, because of interface and interrelationship between performance characteristics such as noise, vibration, and handling in automotive industry. Again, this is very, very difficult to standardize this relationship between the performance characteristics in this industry. And then another reason for being difficult to move to modular type of value chain is power regime or power asymmetry in this industry. In most of the region that I talked earlier about in automotive industry, we have, as I mentioned, we have an oligopoly type of industrial structure. In oligopoly, there are a few number of companies that they are very powerful, and then there is a power asymmetry between automakers and suppliers. So let me talk a little bit about the trends that we are expecting that these trends will impact on automotive global value chain. One of the trends that, again, it has happened so far is decreasing the share of vehicle manufacturer in terms of value adding. If we look at in 1955, 75% of value add was happening by automakers, by vehicle manufacturers. But in 1975, it reduced to 25%, in 25% in 1995, and in the supplier side, we have reverse trend. They started with 25%, 50%. Now they are basically providing 75% of value in automotive value chain. So another trend is these new actors or new entity in the global value chain of automotive industry, which is tier 1, or even we can think about mega supplier or tier 0.5 supplier in automotive industry. In automotive industry, we can structure the supplier part of the industry in different layers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But tier 0.5 has a different kind of capability, which is global reach compared to others. If we look at the tier 0.5, they all, for example, they have the capability of product development, they have capability of product design, but one of the things that they have and tier 1 supplier doesn't is global reach and global presence. So they are becoming very, very powerful in automotive industry. That's why in the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that in automotive global value chain, we have to think about producer, supplier driven value chain, not only producer value chain. Because these new players, they are becoming very, very powerful in this industry, and they are influencing the whole value chain in terms of governance, in terms of coordination. And I will share with you some of the basically things that happened in most of the developing country. Even if we look at the developing country evolution in automotive industry, they are very dependent on working with these new type of suppliers. So they are playing a very key role in automotive industry nowadays. Another trend that we can look at is more a stratification of automotive supply chain. Earlier, we had tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, or so on and so forth. But now, even among the tier 1, we can divide them in different categories. This is a new, basically, 4 category of tier 1 supplier. We can think about system integrators, global standardized systems manufacturers, component specialists, and raw material suppliers. This is more a stratification in supplier industry and automotive industry, right? And then basically, if you look at some of the tier 1 supplier, they have very clear strategy to be positioned in one of these category. Some of them, they don't have very clear strategy to be positioned or to be pursued some of these strategy. But overall, based on the performance of this company, those companies that they are pursuing component specialists, they have been more successful compared to others. So any tier 1 supplier, they can have these different type of a strategy in automotive supply chain. They can be a system integrator, a standardizer, component specialist, or just raw material supplier. So the 4th trend that is going to impact on value chain of automotive industry is internationalization of MNC. That these MNC, they are pushing their supplier also to be internationalized. So it means basically wherever these MNC vehicle manufacturers go and wherever they would invest, they would push their supplier to follow the sourcing and follow the design. And this is basically a term that in automotive industry is commonly used: follow design, follow sourcing, right? Which means if they go abroad and they invest abroad, the suppliers also, they have to go abroad and they have to invest in, specifically in this type, I'm talking about tier 0.5 and tier 1 supplier in automotive industry. So another thing that is interesting to mention in this part, in this trend, is most of the suppliers in different regions, they are focusing to sell their product in their own region. For example, European supplier, they are focusing to sell their product to the Europe, Asian to the Asia, North America to North America. And then the last trend is German firms in automotive supplier are very, very dominant in this industry, and basically it has a lot of implications for developing country that in order at least to find and work with a right partner. So if I want to conclude this part of my presentation, we have seen similar type of trend in the global value chain of automotive industry, like apparel and electronic, which means we have seen a lot of offshore investment, merger, acquisition, and equity-based alliances in 1990s. In terms of geographic scope, we can see similarity between the automotive industry and other industries. But as I mentioned earlier, we don't have robust set of industry standards in this industry to come up and basically define the technical characteristics of interface between component and vehicle. And then basically the other conclusion that we can expect is going to be we are expecting to see the automotive production in terms of vehicle and in terms of parts to be as much as possible close to the market because of political reason, because of technical reason that I mentioned earlier. And then in terms of the geography of the value chain, as I mentioned earlier, we have centralized design center in different regions. And then we have a kind of regional production in terms of production in this value chain. So the design is very, very centralized, but the production part is spread over different regions around the world. So let me, the second section of the presentation is about the global automotive value chain and the developing country. In the developing country section, I picked up a few countries based on the criteria of being close to core automotive production areas and not being close to core automotive production regions. For example, in terms of core production region, we have US, we have Europe, and then we have Japan. There are some countries close to this country, developing country close to this country, and there are some countries that they are very far away from this country, like China, India. So we can expect different type of development in automotive industry in these two different regions. So I picked up 4 countries, which is Korea, Malaysia, Czech, and Turkey. So Czech and Turkey are being close to core production region of automotive industry, but Malaysia and Korea is a little bit far away. Of course, they are somehow close to Japan, but they are not very well influenced by Japan production or automotive industry. So, and also in Malaysia and Korea, we have different type of a strategy in terms of national auto production policy that is not going to happen. It hasn't happened in Turkey or Czech. So before I go to these two different countries' automotive industry evolution or development, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the governance, type of governance that we have discussed earlier. But this type of governance should be changed in developing countries because of many reasons. First of all, if we look at most of the developing country, we don't have when we look at the global value chain theory, in global value chain theory, the main assumption is that the producer has a lot of influence or has a lot of capability in the value chain, which is not true in developing countries. For example, if we look at Malaysia or Korea in the beginning, they were trying to develop a national auto project, national auto capability, but in the beginning they were not a very capable producer in the value chain that can drive the whole value chain. So here, as you can see in this slide, I added capability of producer as 4th dimension of value chain governance. So in terms of capability of producer, we can expect high capability in terms of producer and low capability in terms of producer. So based on high and low, which was not the case in the original version of global value chain governance theory, right? So in this part, as you can see, we can add to 5 type of governance type: vendor, producer deficient, supplier efficient, as well as supplier driven value chain. So what I mean here by vendor, for example, in the early stage of Malaysia automotive industry development, they were, first of all, they have a policy to help and support the automotive vendors, right? But at the time, they were not very powerful automakers that they can influence and they can help the country. So this is a vendor type of governance. We have producer de-efficient, which is the relationship between domestic automakers, like in Malaysia, we have Proton. The way that they are working with domestic supplier, this is not being captured in the previous, basically, type of governance mechanism that we have. And then we have supplier efficient, which is working between Proton and Bosch, Proton and Denso. So Proton and Bosch and Proton and Denso can be classified in supplier efficient and supplier driven. So based on these different type of governance mechanism, we can expect different type of upgrading for developing countries in automotive industry, right? Here, the main basic idea for discussing this slide is that what would be different in global value chain theory for developing country? Can we apply the same type of upgrading in terms of product, process, functional upgrading in developing country, or there has to be difference, or what are the differences? If we look at the automotive industry, obviously there are some differences. Because Proton is not a capable supplier in the beginning. Now they have been able to catch up, but in the beginning they were not very successful. So we have a producer which doesn't have a good capability, but based on that, we will expect basically different type of governance. So Malaysia and Korea. If we look at the Malaysia and Korea, I need to sum up my presentation. I think I'm running short of time. If we look at the shortly Malaysia and Korea, both countries, they have been pursuing a national production capability in automotive industry. But the main difference between Malaysia and Korea is that in Malaysia, they were not able to support and basically help the suppliers to develop, to evolve in the value chain. But if we look at Korea, in Korea, basically the private sector was involved very much in development of the vendors. And then based on that, we can expect nowadays Korea has Hyundai Mobis. Hyundai Mobis is one of the Korean auto component supplier that they are able to basically even to be positioned among top 50 automaker auto part component manufacturer. So if we look at the Czech story, in the Czech story basically, first of all, they are very close to the core automotive region, but the policy that they have been pursuing, sorry, in Czech was that in the beginning they were working very closely with Škoda. Škoda is the domestic vehicle manufacturer in Czech, but over the time in Czech, the government, they were able basically to bring in more automakers, and by diversifying the auto industry and working with different type of vehicle assembler or vehicle manufacturer, they have been able basically to catch up in automotive industry. And nowadays, Czech is having a lot of export with other core region of automotive industry. The same story can be said for Turkey. Turkey also is very close to the core automotive region, but during 1980s, they went through economic liberalization. Based on the economy liberalization, they were able to diversify in automotive industry, and they were able to work with different type of assemblers. So that was one of the key elements of the automotive industry in Turkey. Of course, Turkey doesn't have very powerful national brand, but in terms of